Welcome to another episode of the Business Blumin podcast. We've got an incredible show planned today. Our guest is an entrepreneur. He's a developer, does a bit of everything. He is Sardor Akhmedov. Sardor, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Thanks, Daniel, for having me on. Yeah, I guess that was an interesting introduction. Yeah, I'm not a developer myself. I guess I'm like a more of a power developer who
Mhm.
has developers on staff, and I can develop things for you as a business. But yeah,
Developer one way or another, but we'll definitely get into that. Sardor, you got a really, really cool story. We're going to get into a ton today, but just for starters, we'd love to know if you could share a bit about your background.
absolutely. Yeah. So I'm originally from Uzbekistan. I live currently in Miami, Florida. I lived in four different states in these 9 years. I've been in the U.S., including Massachusetts, California, mainly New York for 5 years, and now for the past 3 years, I've been in Miami. So that's my story. And as far as like the what I'm doing right now, I own a software development, app development agency. Okay, so we help companies build their own mobile apps or custom software. Mainly apps, but sometimes we build like very unique things like kiosk software for like Bitcoin ATMs. We do that as well. We have about 120 people working for us right now. It's a distributed team. We have offices here in Miami, New York, in Uzbekistan, where I'm from. Also, the development offices there. And I do a little bit of angel investing on the side. I'm an angel investor in Fathom AI, one of the most popular AI note-taking companies right now in the space. And other than that, yeah, I like as a hobby discovering new products. So I'm in tech and my hobbies are on tech as well. So pretty geeky. But yeah, happy to share anything around software development, opening businesses. I've bootstrapped different businesses. I've done traditional business as well, like in sport nutrition, restaurant space as well. We opened the first Uzbek restaurant in Manhattan, 2019, 2018 actually. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yep, happy. We'll get into a ton of that. But quick tangent. What's the restaurant called in Manhattan? The Uzbek restaurant?
So it shut down after COVID, but it was called Alfandi Grill. It
Oh,
was
fun.
the very first Uzbek restaurant in Manhattan. Yeah,
Got it. Where was it? Like Manhattan wise, like Upper East Side, Midtown,
yeah, it was East Village actually. Yeah,
East Village.
on
Okay, probably near the
yeah,
Ukraine, probably
yeah, near exactly. Yeah, very close to on the same street as Veselka, if you know the Ukrainian restaurant.
loosely.
Yeah, it's pretty popular. Like been around for like 30, 40 years, I believe, and it's like on the Ninth Street, and then right next to the famous 8th Street with all the restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was Second Avenue and Ninth Street that we were on. Yeah.
Got it. Makes sense. Awesome. I used to, not to get so into it, but I used to live in New York. So I've been to the East Village a
Uh,
handful of times and know the Ukrainian Village.
yeah.
So when you said the Lower East Side, right away in my
Yeah,
head
yeah,
was
it's actually right in Ukraine Village. Yeah, that's
the
right.
sea
That's the
area.
second name for it. Yeah.
That's really cool. Appreciate you sharing that. So one of the things to get into, as you mentioned earlier, you're kind of an entrepreneur now, but a little bit further into your background or in the beginning, kind of something that I read was that when you were young, you were bullied and you didn't have a lot of motivation when you were younger. So sorry to bring up those bad memories, but is there anything
Okay.
that you want to share in regards to how you were able to kind of switch your mindset and become who you are today?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of kids out there, the teenagers and the school kids, right, that may be going through the same thing I was going through. I don't know if it's as harsh as I've
Mhm.
gotten into without getting to the whole like
Don't
victim mindset. I'm only saying this because I want to tell everybody how it can be relatable, right? I mean, where I'm at right now um, is a big leap from where I was, right? In terms of like my emotional state. I'm not talking about like the monetary or anything like that right now. I'm talking about like my emotional, mindset switch that I've had over the years, growing up, like all the way from like the kindergarten, uh, being bullied and like tossed aside and not like even close to popular kid. Actually, popular in a sense that infamous popular, right? Like being that target kid in every single class. Somehow I was really good at that, becoming that the biggest target in class.
Mhm.
So if you have always like that number one kid in class, I was actually the number one from the opposite side, right?
Well,
Uh,
popular, but not the.
right. Right. So, and to me, it was like quite a bit of a journey. I think the biggest switch when was when I was in my summer break in 8th grade.
Mhm.
um, Something changed in there. Like I actually started working for my dad. I think that was it. Like I was 14, and I was pretty much bullied all around. Like I switched so many schools and everything. Every new place I went to, like I thought this problem is gonna go away. My bad reputation is gonna be over. I'm gonna switch to a new school. I switched like 3, 4 different schools at that point. Every time I thought I'm gonna start brand new. The problem was everywhere I went, I brought myself that same mindset, and didn't change. So that summer of 2012, I was just graduated from 8th grade back in Uzbekistan, right? Uh, I started working for my dad. He owns the ice cream business, and I started doing like distribution sales for him, basically, right? So it was like door to door sales, like going to stores and just kind of offering the thing. And I guess I was sick and tired of myself being shy and not being able to assert myself or do anything, like to the point where I was like hesitant to even ask for a check at the restaurant when my dad would ask me like go ask for a check, and I couldn't even do that, right? So that summer something clicked and I said enough, right? I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna do freaking sales door to door, one of the hardest ways to sell, right? Cold outbound, pretty much the OG cold outbound. Right now, like we have all these AI tools and power tools to like do cold outbound calls in our company, but back then I did that door to door, pretty much. In the summer in Uzbekistan, we're talking like 120 degrees outside, and this young 14-year-old kid went door to door and sold. So long story short, I through that built up my confidence because I was able to like just become comfortable with rejections, become comfortable with all the obstacles when selling, and I sold, and I made sales, and I actually became one of the top agents, over that summer among the other like people that were more like experienced salespeople that my dad had in their 30s, 40s, right, and whatnot. I started like really competing with them because by nature I was very competitive, and that's one of the good things I was fortunate with. Even though I was like not a very popular and a good sense kid at school, I always did competitive swimming, um, and being an athlete, I was in that competitive mindset, right? So that helped me out a lot in that. I succeeded pretty well, and then I also, about like August of that year, I went to the UK for a summer camp for 2 weeks to learn English. And there, actually, in that community of kids, at that time I already had 2 months of experience in sales, so I was much more confident. I was able to start brand new and start really well with my reputation. So even though it was a 2-week camp, that changed my mindset, that I can do it, because every experience, if it's a positive or negative, it changes you in a relevant direction, right? If it's a positive experience, it changes your mindset in a positive, right? So that summer was a power summer for me. 2 months of sales experience, door to door, built up my confidence, became comfortable with rejections, became comfortable talking to people, strangers, right? Overcame my shyness, and then that summer camp was that arena where I could actually like kind of like rehearse my new confidence and attitude I was able to build up on the streets in sales. And once that worked out, I came back to 9th grade, in school, completely different kid. I didn't care whatever, whoever said whatever. I was just confident. I didn't care about like people like laughing at me. If they laughed at me, I would laugh along with them. And they were like, and that makes kids powerless. So anybody, even as adults, we sometimes like kind of bully each other, right? There's going to be bullies even as you grow up as well, right? But as kids, we see that more often. So if before, when I was like laughed at, I'd get pissed off, and they would like, you know, kids like that, right? I mean, anybody who's bullying you likes that. That's their purpose, to piss you off. At this time, I was confident enough to actually laugh at myself and say, "Hey, yeah, that's funny," and add even a bigger joke on top of that, and that makes your opponent powerless. They're like, "Holy shit, this guy doesn't care. He's actually like comfortable with this," and you become the cool kid. And that's how I switched, right? So I this time around, I like was I switched like 4 different schools. Never, it almost never worked out, like changing my reputation. But this time around, I was able to change my reputation, staying in the same place. But I changed myself, right? So over that summer, so it was a lot of like courage that I took in the beginning, threw myself out there, built up my confidence and changed my mindset, and that what really changed me, as a kid, and then built up my foundation further to actually succeed in life further on.
Got it. That's awesome. We'll definitely get into the later part in life. But one thing you said, would you say that working in sales or going door to door kind of forced you to be uncomfortable, forced you to, learn how to talk to people, and ultimately that helped your mindset going forward? And
100%. I mean, I think that experience was key. It was key, um, and that definitely built up, my confidence
mm,
because sales is scary, and it's more scary than probably talking to your peers at school, because these are adults and they treat you as a kid. But somehow I just didn't care, and it was just, I think I hit the rock bottom, so I just said, whatever, right? I'm just gonna do it, whatever. And I kept going, and yeah, that definitely built my confidence and changed me as a person.
awesome. It's beautiful when you just kind of, start to put everyone's opinions to the side and do your own thing, and ultimately great things happen. So it's incredible to see that happen too. But
Mm.
to get into the next part of your kind of life story, I know right now you're an entrepreneur, and we'll get into the whole
Mhm.
Jackson part and the investing part. But would love to know, when did you first know you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Um, I think it was like second nature to me from the start. Like as long as I remember myself, I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
Um, Only looking back into hindsight now, I know why though. Like I can't tell when it happened, when I decided that, but I know that happened super early on, like for as long as I remember myself. But I know why that happened. Because my dad was an entrepreneur, and without knowing that, I mean, not every kid aspires to be what their parents are. I did a lot looking up at my dad because I really lacked his attention as a kid because he was an entrepreneur and he spent a lot of time at work. So I didn't have enough of his attention. So to me, like I thought the best way to grab that, I guess subconsciously as a kid, is to do what he does, right? To be related to him, to do what he's doing, right? Because I always had enough attention from my mom. I was very touched, but my dad was like more distant. He was always at work, spent very little time with me. I was the third kid in the family. Like my two older sisters that are 5, 6 years older than me, they got enough because he was still, I think, early on in his career and he wasn't as busy. But when I was born, it was a different situation in family. So that though, sort of like that obstacle became my you know gift in a way. That curse was my gift, and that inspired me to actually know and have and built up my passion through that, for entrepreneurship.
Following your father's footsteps. And aside that, I can relate. I'm also the youngest of three, so it's definitely a hassle being the youngest. But
Yeah.
kudos to you for being able to kind of overcome that. So really interesting hearing, why your dad was an entrepreneur and subsequently why you wanted to become one. Another part of your story that's really interesting. So you end up winning a scholarship to go to school in the States, and then eventually went to college in the States, or actually, I may not remember exactly, but I do recall that you did choose to leave university, so I'd love to know what the rationale behind that was and how you ultimately made that decision.
Like why I switched my universities, why I went to two different universities, or
Sure. Why you went to university is why ultimately you left. Just anything you
oh,
think.
why I left. Okay, yeah, cool. So yeah, I mean, I came here when I was 16, and to me, it was like I wasn't too much into school
Hmm.
necessarily
Me neither.
because right before that, yeah, I mean, I did study well only in two subjects back in Uzbekistan. At one point I realized this system doesn't make sense, especially in Uzbekistan. We have like over 20 or even 30 different subjects, like believe it or not. Like in the US you have like 5 or 6, right? And you can choose what art you want to choose, what science you want to choose. There you don't choose. It's still the legacy Soviet system that they keep, where in Soviet Union the purpose of school was not to educate as much as to put people in the mindset of obedience. You have
For
to
sure.
follow the regime, right? Authority, your teacher is your authority, right? And that puts you in that mindset. It's very much a psychological machine that they had, right? So unfortunately they still follow those
Mhm.
things, and they still have that outdated system of like 30 different classes. So I hated that. I knew that system was wrong as a kid. So I said, okay, I don't care about anything else. I'm going to only study English and math. These are the two subjects I'm going to be freaking number one at. And I was. I won all the school Olympiads and those, the competitions. I was number one in math and English. Nobody could compete with me. Everything else, I couldn't care less. Like they had like, I don't know, like biology, they had like physics, everything. I couldn't care less, right? So I was always that kind of kid who doubled down, and it was the right strategy because like English obviously helped me when I came to the US, and the math is just your mindset. It just becomes a smarter person, I think, as you learn math. I mean, even if you're not going to use those algorithms in life, you're still it just builds your brain cells. Okay, so long story short, though, I came to US and I wasn't a fan of school, right? But to me, it was a cool experience. Yeah, probably coming abroad and studying abroad. Overall, that experience was like interesting to me. But I knew that I want to start my business as soon as possible, and college may or may not be the best option. I entertained an idea of becoming a software engineer, learning that just so I can build a business in tech, which I also very early on knew I wanted to do business in tech. So I went into electrical engineering after graduating from high school. So I went to um, 11th and 12th grade in the US. And then I went to college, New York Institute of Technology, and I studied computer engineering. And there, I realized after a semester that actually, it's computer science, computer engineering, or electrical engineering, that was my major, is not something that really comes natural to me either. So I switched my major to business and started pursuing that. And there I realized, after, changing my school and major, that actually studying business in school, like, doesn't make any sense because like the professors that are teaching you, they're not entrepreneurs. Like my professors would literally come to school, to class, and start their lessons with, so when you start working for a business, when you start working for a company, like, hold on, am I not studying business here? And then I realized, okay, I'm studying like operations in the business. Okay, well, that's different. I don't want to be an employee. Okay, I want to own my own business. So I left college. Okay, and I started pursuing my business endeavors, and I never looked back since then.
It's awesome. I think, personally, there's maybe a few classes that I think are important to learn, like some finance, accounting classes, but everything else, realistically, there's so much material out there. You could definitely learn on your own.
Yeah, or you can hire around those things. I mean, I hated accounting and I still do to this day, and that's why I have an accountant on staff, who studied that, and I didn't, and that's fine.
Right. That's how you work smart. Everyone's like, you have to work hard, you have to learn this, you have to learn that, and then it takes them 5 years. You're just like, no, like I'm not good at it. I'll hire someone else. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
every solution has a complicated problem and then an easy problem. So I think people, I don't know why I love to think complicated, but the idea is to think easier, and ultimately that's
Yeah, you should double down on your strength and just hire around your weaknesses. And to me, if my strength is actually leadership, entrepreneurship, starting businesses, ideating, which is a rare thing as well. And that's not something that they teach in school necessarily. It's something you have to like do practice and improve at yourself, right? But everything else, like actual programming, I don't know how to code. But I have over 100 developers that work for me, and that's totally fine.
not for sure. Higher on your weaknesses, work double down on your strengths. I think is a
Yep.
good business.
Yep.
Grateful to hear on that. Another thing to get into. No, you mentioned earlier that right now you're based in Miami, Florida. I would love to know what it's like living in Florida right now.
It's a good time. I mean, when I was moving, I had no idea
Mhm.
like what it's going to be like. I always treated Florida and especially Miami, where I went to vacations during winter, like only the vacation spot. Because I always stayed in Miami Beach, and to me, it was all about Miami Beach. I didn't realize that there's Miami, the city. That's actually pretty. It's not like a leisure place. It's actually can be a very modern urban place. And without realizing it back then, now looking back in the hindsight, I realized I moved at the perfect time. You know, Back then I just took a leap of faith. I was bored in COVID in New York City, locked up, and I said, whatever, I'm just gonna move out of here and go to Florida. It seems like it's more fun there. And I was told about the tax benefits and everything. That was a plus. So, but I realized I moved at the perfect time. Okay, because it was a time when everybody did the same thing from New York. They moved to Florida, so every second person, almost everybody I meet, probably 90% of people that I met that were new to the city were from New York City. So it was easy to connect and build your network that way. So I can comfortably say that I built a better and stronger network here in Florida now in the last 3 years than I did in New York, where I was there for almost the same or longer amount, you know, of time. And Florida has, in the past 3 years, also transformed more into a tech hub than it was before. You know, especially Miami. Like the city of Miami mayor is really very supportive of tech community. Um, he actually set one of his goals to make Miami one of the East Coast Silicon Valley. You know, and I think it's a perfect timing too because Silicon Valley, the actual Silicon Valley, is collapsing right now. In my observation, not just opinion, because I've went there and lived there for a bit, and it's not the same anymore. Um, so I would say overall, yeah, it's a perfect timing to move to South Florida to Miami. um, we were able to land some really big clients here as well because the market was more or less empty and we took over and became the number one in the city for app development and landed some huge clients like Patrick Bet David, like of Valuetainment. That guy, I mean, he's one of my people that I looked up to for years. And then he literally reaches out to us one day because if we were in New York and he was in New York, that would have been less likely to happen because it's a more saturated market. Here we took advantage of that. So yeah, we can talk about the advantages of going into smaller markets too. um, but overall, I'm very happy with this choice, and I think I made one of the best choices in my life moving here.
Florida's incredible. One day I'd love to move down there. Right now, located in Philadelphia, where it's about to get freezing in a few months. So I'm sure
Yeah,
you'll enjoy the weather
yeah,
there. But
yeah. Winter is the best time.
yeah, winter's the best time to be in Florida for sure. But hopefully one day can move down there. The other thing I wanted
Sure.
to get to, if you could speak more specifically about Florida, you mentioned there's like tax benefits, the business friendly environment. I'd love to know like what other advantages you've had moving to Florida that like you couldn't have had elsewhere regarding that business.
Uh, benefits for the business that I couldn't have anywhere else if I didn't move here. Okay, so yeah, like I mentioned, having this market being less competitive than other bigger markets like New York, LA, Austin probably are more competitive here. Um, it's more overlooked, I would say, although it's some bigger companies starting to get here. But we are already well positioned here. So, the time we moved here and started promoting here, our largest clients used to always be in New York and Texas because I was in New York. My business partner was in Texas for some time. We had the biggest clients there, and the markets were big, right? But comparing our current clients here in Miami to those that we had there, it's much different level. We're working more with the bigger brands, the bigger names in the industry. So that was a big advantage, okay, because we took over the competition better here than any other market. And on top of that, yeah, tax benefits obviously, for your income tax.
Always nice.
The huh?
I said no, no, always nice to save money, pay less
Of
taxes.
course, yeah. I mean, numbers are staggering on what you can save here. Like that 10% a year on additional on your federal tax. That's already 20%. That adds up. It can be a big chunk of money. So, but also the community. We also launched earlier this year an AI community here in Miami, and again, that was pretty easy compared to anywhere else. I haven't like done much of that anywhere else, but I'm sure if we did it in larger markets, it would have been harder to do like somewhere in Silicon Valley again or New York, right? And we have a pretty big community of AI enthusiasts and specialists right now that we built. We do weekly AI events in our office, and our name is known. We're more known for AI now than a lot of other companies in this industry. So that was a benefit, and the connections that we built through that, has been helping our business. We hired some people through that. We've got some clients through that. It's been incredible for those three reasons, right? So the tax benefits, the less of a competition, and the ability to build a community faster.
Awesome, sounds great. I mean, Miami sounds like a place to be. Happy you've had some disadvantages there, but hopefully, only continued success there. And I know I keep saying this, but selfishly, would love to be in.
For sure, anytime.
Appreciate that. Maybe it was one day. Another thing to get into, as we mentioned earlier, there's a company that called Jafton. I would love to know how that company kind of came to be.
Right. So yeah, that's my main thing. Like like more than 8 hours a day, I'd probably do that. Everything else I'm involved with is more, it's passive, because it's an investment or something else, or I don't try to like overbuild myself with too many things. But with Jafton, so the company originally was founded by my business partner 10 years ago, 2013. It didn't even have a name to itself. It was just him being known in the industry as the tech guy, and people were like asking him for help with projects, right? And he landed some pretty big projects. It was successful. And then about 2016, he came to the US, and he started branding. He put a brand on it and started promoting the agency more or less, right? Uh, and in 2019, um, it was still like a mid-sized, like relatively small agency, like 15 people. Hasn't broken that seven-figure revenue yet. Back then, and he decided to double down and focus on this business, right? Because before then, he was considering other businesses as well. But there's a power in when you start focusing on one thing. Okay, so we knew each other back then. He was my mentor. He's been like helping me out with a lot of things, and I was helping him as well. So he offered me this opportunity, saying, "Hey, you can join me in this position of business development manager, right? Basically, growing the sales for the company, because he was doing everything himself back then, um, with the potential to co-own this company as a partner." So to me, it was a big opportunity because I could have jumped in here, or I could have tried to start my own company, which already had a profitable business at the time. I had a sport nutrition business, but it was not in tech. I wanted to get into tech. Okay, so, and if I started my own company, it would have taken longer, right? So I joined in, first as an employee, just kind of hustling and doing sales, knowing nothing about sales, but learning it on the way. My entrepreneurial spirit, and slowly built up this company to now having 120 employees, 8-figure valuation, and we're growing now faster and better than ever before in the last 4 years. Um, and yeah, been very happy with this choice. I'm an equal partner in the company, so it's me and my business partner now um, that own this business, and we're hiring more people, and it's just amazing how when there's a synergy, how much things can grow, because it was a perfect match for us. He's more of a experienced person in the industry. He's been in tech for 20 years. He's 15 years older than me. He's 40-year-old, and he's more leveled and experienced. Me, on the other hand, I'm like more like let's go, like super, like enthusiastic and pushy, and I think it's a good balance.
That's right. That's exactly what I was thinking. It's a good way to balance out. He's like a little more experienced, but you're more hustling, bustling.
Yep.
They sound like they wouldn't work together, but when you're both on the same page regarding vision, it's incredible.
Exactly. Yeah.
Definitely. Another thing, kind of more specifically, I think you've mentioned this before, but what would you say your main kind of clients are at Justin, and more specifically, the kind of work that
Yes, so we don't have one specific industry focus. We have other like smaller agencies that we also have under Jafton that are more industry specific. But Jafton overall, everything that probably isn't gaming, we take on, right? We've done all kinds of apps, anywhere from healthcare to, we've done a weed delivery app, we've done a gambling app, we've done a uh, app for airlines, app for e-commerce, right? So right now we're trying to focus more on at least mid-sized to enterprise level businesses, right? More bigger accounts. We still take on early stage startups too, um, but it's a very, very diverse pool of clients. It's pretty much anybody needs an app. One specific area of focus that we decided to go on about 3 years ago was app development, because before we were just not positioning ourselves as an app development company. We were more like just tech consulting, any software type of thing. We still do all kinds of different software, but we promote and have 95% of our business through mobile app development.
got it. Also interesting. So, quick follow into that. A lot of these companies now have like in-house solutions for creating apps. Like this is something they more or less outsource to
Yep.
just do.
To companies like us. Yep.
Okay. Also, cool. Really interesting to hear about that. So basically, a company, mid to enterprise level idea comes to tells you they have tells you their business, tells you the idea for the app, and you guys make it happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome, sounds good. Really appreciate hearing more about Jeff. And on a higher level, you're a big leader in this company. You mentioned earlier about the kind of change that you've had in your life that helped you overcome the fear of being bullied into this beast of an entrepreneur, to say the least. But what advice would you have for future business leaders, and specifically maybe those who are worried about making mistakes?
Um, so for those who are worried about making a mistake and starting a business for the first time, right?
Yep.
I'd say, yeah, the odds are not in your favor, right? To be honest, I mean, it has to be said. When you're starting your first business, I've failed my first few businesses, actually, not just the first one. Um, thank God they were on a smaller scale. But early on, I figured out how to, mitigate the risk and like not lose too much money, you
Yeah,
know.
that's the same. Don't.
So what I would recommend is actually that,
Mhm.
half the battle is actually before you even make any money, figure out how you're not going to lose money. Okay. That's half the battle before you even make a ton of money with the business. Because a lot of people get too enthusiastic with their business ideas. They get romanticized. They either invest their own savings or raise money from usually their family, friends, and they blow that. I've seen my clients do that quite often, right? They put their kids' college saving account and into a business and it doesn't work out. The truth is that 90% of startups and small businesses, they fail within the first 3 years, right? So I think that the reason is like lacking the experience there in the industry that you're starting in, not testing the market before you're launching. Okay. So and overspending money, and you run out of money too quickly. Let's say you have 50 grand to spend. I mean, half the battle, like I said, is try to stay as lean as possible and not overspend the money before you even make any money. Okay. And try to make money as early as possible. I mean, I'll tell you my example of how I started my first, I'd say, I mean, it wasn't the first profitable business. I've done like smaller scale profitable businesses, but this one was more of a proper company, I would say, that I started with zero capital actually, and zero financing, zero loans, nothing. Like literally with bootstrapping. And the way I did it is, I'm a big fan of a customer funded business model. Okay. That's when you charge your customers up front for something that hasn't been delivered to them yet. A
Like
lot
deferred,
of people are, huh?
like deferred revenue. Like you collect money up
Yeah,
front, subscription model.
yeah, exactly. And many entrepreneurs, when they're new, they don't know that model. So what I did is, I had a potential client that was buying their supplies of sport nutrition through a retailer, okay, through different retailers. And I saw that was inefficient. And I knew if I reached out to brands directly and got a wholesale pricing, I could have saved him a lot of money. Okay. Um, but I wanted to make some money in the middle as well, right? For that. So uh, if let's say he was buying things at $10 a pop, I said, if I got you the same item at $8 a pop, right? Would you buy from me? He said, of course. And he was buying volumes. I'm talking like tens of thousands of dollars, right? A month. So that's what I did. And then I reached out to the brand. I said, hey, what's the pricing for this if I bought, 10 grand at a time from you, right? Or more? They're like $6. All right. So there you go. My 20% in between there. I'm making some profit and I'm selling cheaper to that person than he was buying from other places. And with only one exception though, he has to pay me up front. Okay. And but that by that time I already built up the trust with him because he was my customer in my other business that I had. It was a very small business of like logistics, making like not even $1,000 a month, very small business. But see how that built up the gateway for me and a connection to the client that then helped me build like I think we eventually built it to a $50,000 a month revenue. Uh, and it was all funded by the customer. Like I didn't put up any upfront money. I didn't even have that money, to put it up front. So I got very creative. I funded like that. So that would be my advice. I mean, you can do that not only with this business. I mean, you can do that with many different businesses. You can even like one of the people I really follow a lot is Cody Sanchez, and she popularized the concept of seller finance businesses that you can buy and sellers will literally finance you their business. You'll pay them off over time. You don't have to invest anything up front. She buys a ton of businesses with $0 upfront. She literally buys those businesses with no money. You see, sounds like super controversial, but that's something you can do. There's still a lot of options, right? And unfortunately, 90% of business people, they just go the classic route of investing their own money and getting burnt with it before they even have a proof of concept in the market.
Got it. So it's one of those things because you're willing to take on a larger volume that was willing to pay for such a thing, you're able to kind of so something
Yep.
that more people could take advantage of, but for whatever reason they're stuck in this traditional. No, we're going to get funding, and then we're going to risk like millions of dollars. Hopefully, these investors won't get mad at us.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
crazy, crazy thing. But no, awesome to hear about that and kind of your advice for that. Centralized to your growth. Do you think are there any other mentors that have been kind of really vital to your growth as an entrepreneur and just as a business leader in general?
Totally. I mean, from those that I know in person, I mean, number one mentor has always been and will be my father, my dad.
Mhm.
He's from early days of inspiring me to become an entrepreneur in the first place to this day where I still like discuss every major decision I make in business with him. And then my second mentor in this business is my business partner currently, who's like I said, he's much older than me, more experienced, and he's been you know I've been very fortunate to meet him, 6 years ago, and he's been mentoring me and has contributed a huge amount. I always give him that credit to me getting here, right? It wasn't without me, of course, like giving back to him as well, right,
Sure.
with my time and energy. But that was that, key. He was that key person. He's been that key person for me. Other than that, every other mentor I have is more virtual. Okay. Gary Vaynerchuk, I listen to him all the time. I consider them my mentors as well. People that I don't talk to one on one, but they are my mentors. Because I listen to their content. Alex Lieberman, I've been listening to him a lot lately. I've actually had an opportunity to talk to him 2 weeks ago.
Awesome.
Yeah, is there's these apps now that you can like book a call with certain people for a set amount of fee. You know, and we decided to do those monthly with him, which is really cool. What a great time we're living in, where you can like literally talk to your mentors, like by just reaching out and like booking a call with them. Yeah, there's a fee involved, but it's they don't do that for a fee necessarily. They don't get rich off of that $1,000 you pay them. They just do it to filter like the demand, but they're available out there. So yeah, those would be like the top mentors
Got it.
that I would mention.
It's incredibly good to talk to Alex on a monthly basis and just general people that you follow. So, in regards to kind of your more physical mentors or people personally, it's a two-way street. You want to give back to them, but they're actively invested in you. So it's incredible to hear about how they've been able to help out your career. But really awesome to hear about that. Just
Absolutely.
the other things just wanted to get into. So you're the youngest member ever that's been on the Forbes Business Council and kind of the youngest to speak at Synergy Global, who with similar names such as Mark Cuban, Richard Branson, or Gary Vaynerchuk that have also spoken there. So what does that mean to you that you've been kind of able to share the stage with such notorious names?
Yeah. So to me, I mean, all this is has been a wild ride. It was during COVID, so it was a virtual summit. It was like usually Synergy Global happens like you know physically, like in person. Actually, my business partner was one of the sponsors when they first launched in the US. He co-organized the event with them, which is wild. I couldn't make it to that event, but then they did another one in 2020 for the first time. They did it virtually. Okay, usually they do it in person. They When they first did it in the US, they rented out Madison Square Garden, and it was a full house. They sold out tickets and it was incredible, right? They did the same size event or bigger during COVID when everything shut down, and they were accepting speakers. So I was lucky enough to be invited, through certain like connections I had, to be one of the speakers. So it was a virtual stage that I shared with them, but it was pretty wild as well. Like being listed on their website, like next to those speakers, like Chuck Norris. I think they had Wim Hof. They had Mike Tyson. Like all these people. It was pretty wild for me. It's definitely a big, you know, reputation jump for me, when I announced that publicly. Um, and yeah, I try to do more of those speeches to this day. Although since then I've been more head down to business, so not doing too many public speeches anymore. I resumed it kind of like 2 months ago now, which is why I'm on this podcast. But yeah, it has to be balance of like, when you're running a business, you have to remember you're not just a public personality, a public speaker, but you're an actual entrepreneur who runs a business, right? So
Crazy. Definitely must be a great honor, and for sure it's probably tough to balance the speaking and probably tough to do a lot of these appearances and also just run your business in general. But it is really important. I think a lot of business folks have to remember that while being a CEO or kind of the head of your company, you are in charge of a lot of the PR stuff, but you also have to make sure you don't forget the main job. So I think it's really great you bring that up. Just a few other things to discuss. You briefly mentioned earlier that you're an investor, kind of on the side. I would love to know briefly kind of what you look for when you're investing in companies and how you make decisions.
right. Yeah, so I don't like actively seek out deals or invest. Like again, I think that would be a distraction if I invest in 20 different companies and I kept investing like as an angel investor, taking appointments, things like that. I more so do that when I see it's a no brainer, and this I have to like invest in this opportunity. So currently I've invested in three different companies. Um, so one of them is in real estate. Another one is actually more traditional business and distribution, wholesale. Both are already profitable since I invested, and they bring dividends already. That's what I like about traditional businesses, as opposed to tech, is that the returns are more immediate.
Yeah.
You know, it pays dividends faster, right? Um, so my real estate and the traditional, the distribution business both pay dividends to this day. Um, and with the third business, it's an AI company called Fathom AI. I did a small sum of investment when they were raising their last round, and it's way more long term. Until they go public, I'm probably not going to be able to cash out. It's a private company, it's a tech company that's losing money every single day, as they should as a tech company, right? So there's no dividends there. But I only did that because I was their number one user. I was one of their first users. I've been a member of their founders club, which they give early access to all their features. They get feedback from us on product build, and they give us these opportunities to invest more, right? So they gave me shares even before I invested anything, tiny shares, just because I was one of the first early users, power users, and giving them a lot of feedback on the product, and got about like 30 people in our team to use it, and probably spread it to 300 more people because, I'm on these Zoom calls all day, right? So what I look for is like I don't seek out these opportunities. I only do it when I'm offered and I see that this is a no-brainer. This is something that's gonna. It's an industry I understand. You know, it's something that I'm using myself, ideally, or the founder is just somebody I know really well and I believe in them, right? Which was the case with the real estate and the distribution business. I knew the founders really well. I believed in them. I believed in the business. With Fathom, it was just a business that I like. It's a product that I'm using myself. So it made sense to invest.
Interesting. Before I get into kind of a few parting things, tech company, especially tech company valuation, is like one of these really interesting concepts because you'll have tech companies that have negative profitability, but they'll have like very high revenues, but they're also the highest valuation. So I think tech is the one sector where you can have companies losing millions or billions of dollars a year, but they're also selling for the highest valuations.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting
Beauty of
dynamic.
tech.
But I really appreciate that, Sardor. You have a really interesting story, from growing up in Uzbekistan, overcoming some early fears, and then ultimately becoming an investor while doing that on the side, and then kind of running Draftin. Some parting notes. I'd love to know in your personal life what brings you happiness.
It brings me happiness, personal life. Yeah. So besides everything else, I'm a big family guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably my top value.
Mm-hmm.
All the whole hierarchy, before business, before everything else. So to me, it's when I'm able to care for my family, and I know that everything I'm doing at business, everything else, like it's all like it's a means to an end. Which the end for me is like being able to actually be that perfect son, be that perfect spouse, be that perfect sibling, to my family members, and that's what brings me happiness when I'm able to care for them. I'm able to, you know, um, provide like real care, meaning it can be a simple thing, like as I don't know, like picking up my sister and dropping her off somewhere, because I care for her. Buying something, even if it's a small thing for my mom, simple things like that.
It's also
Yeah,
always love to ask that to the people's perspectives. I think ultimately,
absolutely.
a lot of people have a bunch of different goals, but I think in the end, everyone wants to be happy. So I
Yep.
really appreciate you sharing the insight there. And just on a parting note, is there anything else that you think you want the listeners to know? Think people should know?
Um, no, I really appreciate you having me on. To me, like I said, I've been very fortunate with a lot of things that I've been lucky with in life to meet certain people at certain times, you know, um, and figuring it out and getting out of some puzzles that were very challenging at certain points in my life. So if you're there right now, I would say future looks bright, and as long as you keep going, though, it's not a given. Unfortunately, not everybody gets out of the bad situations, but as long as you keep going, as long as you keep trying different things, you're guaranteed to get out of the whatever situation you're in. And if you feel like this story that I told resonates with you and you need some help in life or mentorship, be happy to, help out as much as I can. So people can reach out to me. My best way to reach out to me is through LinkedIn. My first and last name, Sardor Akhmedov. I'm sure there's going to be some links in the episode notes
Yep.
for that, and I'd be happy to help you out. Yeah,
Okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing. We'll definitely list the links to your Instagram, your LinkedIn, so people can come and find you. But really appreciate that. But overall, Sardar, you have an incredible background. Seem like an incredible person, and you're building an incredible company at Jafton. Wish you nothing but continued success. And thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Business with Blumin podcast.
absolutely. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Daniel.